Much, Pastor.
You're welcome.
Hey, approval of the minutes.
So move.
Second by anybody?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please raise the right hand. Okay, Kristen.
Okay.
Are there any changes? We already did it, right? Approval of today's agenda.
So
Move
moved.
adoption is written.
Who said it? Glenn? Okay,
I said move
second.
adoption is written, yes.
Second,
Second.
Ms. Ames, all in favor, please raise the right hand. Thank you very much. Okay, report of the town manager.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Good to see everybody. I'll call on Sherry Mendrick, I guess I should say award-winning floodplain administrator, to give our 2021 update on the outreach projects and flood insurance coverage assessment. And this is part of our community rating system program for public info. So Ms. Sherry, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager, Mayor, and council members. I am Sherry Mendrick, the floodplain administrator for the town of Hilton Head Island. Enclosed in your packet is this year's summary report for the Program for Public Information Committee meeting, which summarizes the outreach projects that we perform each year for credit in the community rating system. I actually presented this information to you as a 5-year update back in January, where we had revamped the program and added some new outreach projects, and we're working through that process, trying to implement these projects this year. I would like for you to take note in the annual meeting summary that our committee had a discussion which centered around Risk Rating 2.0. Risk Rating 2.0 is FEMA's new rating methodology for flood insurance policies. Since the early 70s, FEMA has not changed the way they have written flood insurance policies. Policies were previously rated on whether you were in or out of the floodplain and how high your home was elevated above the base flood elevation. Well, beginning October 1st for new policies of this year and for renewed policies beginning April 1st, 2022, flood insurance will now be rated on the geographical characteristics of a home. The mandatory purchase requirement will still apply whether the home is inside or outside the floodplain, but for any homeowner that has a flood insurance policy, it will no longer be just that difference between the lowest floor and the base flood elevation. They are now taking into account the distance to the flooding source, the distance to the coast, the foundation type of the home, how high it is elevated above the ground elevation, and the replacement cost value. What FEMA is trying to do is to even out the way that flood insurance policies are written, and they are actually are using the term equity in action. So the people who are at a higher risk will be paying higher flood insurance premiums. The committee agreed in our meeting that the 2022 outreach projects regarding flood insurance promotion will center around an initiative to disseminate information to our citizens about Risk Rating 2.0. So if you guys have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them at this time, and I appreciate your attention. Yes, sir.
Sherry, is there any relationship between primary and excess flood premiums?
I do not have the answer to that question. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your flood insurance carrier. They would be able to get into the details of those differences. Any other questions? Thank you.
You are, sorry, keep going.
It is our intention to bring
Gotta start
back,
over. It's been on mute, sorry.
Mark's giving instructions here today, so please be with us, please be patient.
Sorry.
It is our intention to bring the town council meetings back to public at Town Council Hall, starting in January 4th. Bring the meetings back to there, then the public will be invited, then we will have some security measures in place by then. And this is all dependent upon how the pandemic is at that particular point. So if the numbers rise for any of the new strains of the virus, or if it's worse around here, we will change our mind and stay at town hall. But we will move back then. I think it's a good thing. I think we all work better being together in person. I think it's a good thing for the public that we're all together. And I think it will serve us all very well to be there in January. In addition to that, the next meeting in December has been canceled for lack of agenda items. So after this meeting, our next meeting will be January 4th. God willing, in town hall with all of us here at the same time. Report by council members. Mr. Stanford, local area transportation studies.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. LATS had a meeting last Friday. I attended as the town's representative, and Siren was there as well. Refresh everyone, LATS is the regional transportation agency that controls the disbursement of funds. So it's a vital source to us here on Hilton Head, as well as to the entire county. First, we had a report from Craig Wynn, who is the project manager for the 278 Carter Improvement Project. He reports that they are continuing to evaluate the MKSK revisions proposed to the so-called preferred alternative. He expects to have those comments and reactions completed by the end of January. He reports that they're still working on public comments. They got hundreds of public comments, and they're working on responses to those and summarizing those. He expects that to be completed later, probably in January. Another major project in our region that's underway right now is the expansion and improvement of Highway 17 from South Carolina 305 to the Georgia boundary. The problem with that road project is that there's not any solid earth to build a highway on. And so what they're having to do is go in and compress soil and so forth to make that a safe and improved highway. There will be a traffic light, though, installed in March is the schedule. That traffic light will be at the intersection of 305 and 170 as it comes through there. We've all gone through that intersection, and it's very, very busy. So that is will be a nice improvement for us starting next spring. Finally, there was a report from a contractor that is operated under contract with the county about evaluating the condition of all roads in the county, including those on the town of Hilton Head Island, including county roads, state roads, and so forth. And that condition report rates all of those roads on a 1 to 5 scale. And I am in the process of receiving that report, and I'll make sure that engineering has that report and that we use that in our planning for paving of town roads as we move forward into the future. That's my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. As a side note, Mark and myself were up in Charleston and Mount Pleasant the other day. Why don't you explain the super lighting or traffic signals we've seen in Mount Pleasant?
Yes, the traffic signals that we've somewhat touched on. One of the recommendations out of the MKSK plan with all of you was the adaptive intelligent traffic signal.
Right.
I've read about them. I know Mr. Stanford has sent me his report on it. He drove up to Mount Pleasant, and while I was there, I took a detour and we drove through Mount Pleasant on Johnny Dodds. And for miles, these signal systems were in place. And what was so interesting is to see at every intersection, at every mast arm, literally a camera, an interactive camera that is monitoring and adjusting the traffic signals and flow. And so I do have a good friend, Eric DeMora, who's the Mount Pleasant city manager, and I've called to kind of pick his brain on the functionality of that. And so What the good news is what was recommended, I saw firsthand, not just reading about, and have a real good point of reference from a fellow colleague on, the functionality, the maintenance, the interactive part of it. So I think it would be a major benefit, not just to Hilton Head Island system, but to the regional network. And those are things that we've talked about with the county, with Eric, as well as others in the county as part of our conversation. So stay tuned for some more.
And speaking of Eric, all the work on 278 now and requests by the town go through Eric at the county. Eric has recently signed the IGA agreement with the state, and I've asked Mark to get a copy of that and distribute a copy of that to all members of council, okay? Okay, Tammy, local country government?
So thank you, Mayor. I do not have a report tonight for the Low Country Council of Government. However, if I can skip back to under general reports and use my time there were a couple of things that I wanted to share. The first is that you may or may not be aware, but the Dove Street lighting is up again and operational. And I encourage everyone to drive through. It's amazing that for decades now and returning this year, Dove Street has put on such a beautiful display of festival lights for all of the island to enjoy. They are collecting donations that I believe that they will pass on to Deep Well, but it's free of charge and for everyone to enjoy. Additionally, I had the pleasure on Sunday evening of driving through the Mitchellville Festival of Light, and it was equally as amazing. And I encourage, if you haven't done that, I believe it's now over, but make sure that you have it on your calendar for next year. Having said those two things, I wanted to also talk about something that's overdue, but we were a bit preoccupied. I had the pleasure of meeting up with two of the amazing teachers over at the middle school who invited me to see some of what's happening there. And I was proud and privileged to do that. While I was there, they shared with me a book that was produced by the students and staff of Hilton Head Island Middle School. It's named Capturing COVID, Visions and Voices from the Middle. It was a collaboration with the Rotary Club. And as I read through it, you can't help but be impressed by the art. And when you take time to read the poems and information that's shared by these students about their experiences having lived through this 1.5 to 2 years of COVID, and be somewhat emotional. This copy I purchased, and I'm going to leave here in Town Hall for everyone to look through. I would pick out 1 or 2 to read to you, but it would be so hard to choose. Every one of these pictures and these stories are worthy of time spent by everyone when you have a chance. They are available for sale through the middle school. And I would highly recommend, if you have an extra $20, you want to make an impression on someone about how incredible our schools are, this is the way to do it. So this is for the town to have and enjoy. I also wanted to share a book that was created by Bill Borg and Myra Scott, Myrtle, the Loggerhead Turtle. And we all know about Myrtle and her presence on the island. It's equally a beautiful book, well-written. And I think that we should encourage and celebrate those people on the island who are making such a phenomenal difference in so many areas. And our ecology and our turtles are one place where this book highlights how important Hilton Head is to the world. So those two are my recommendations. Those are my reports under general. And thank you for your time and attention.
Mayor, I also have a general report, if I may.
Can I ask you first?
May I?
David,
Thank you.
could you say something about Gail Quick and Sally Warren?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Today, I would like to pay respect to a public servant and longtime island resident. Gail Quick died unexpectedly last Monday, November 29th. She served in executive positions at the Technical College of the Lowcountry and USCB, but it was Gail's contributions to Hilton Head Island that should be remembered today. She chaired the Planning Commission, was vice chair of the Land Management Rewrite Committee, served on the mayor's task force for the island's future, the Greater Island Council's Vision Steering Committee, Circle to Circle Committee, and was a founding member of the Hilton Head Island Institute. She also served on the board of South Island Public Service District. But for those who served with her, it was not the list of organizations that truly represented her contributions. It was her insights, wisdom, and courage that made Hilton Head Island a better community. May she now rest in peace. Thank you. And I'll come back and say something about Sally if that's what you like, but I don't have my notes in front of me right at the moment.
Okay, you couldn't have found a nicer person than Gail.
Right.
Mr. Brown, the Floodwater Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report. I did receive your email about the beach conference. I'm trying to move some stuff around on my calendar, so I'll get back to you.
It's also the same week, Alex, as the Legislation Committee in Columbia,
Okay,
just so you know, okay?
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lennox, the Loco Regional Board.
No report from Soloco.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ames, on the airport.
Yes, the commercial aircraft parking apron and ramp are well underway with clearing and site prep nearly complete. Asphalt concrete will begin soon in March with a March completion date. The terminal design and construction drawings are nearly complete with only details being finalized. And then finally, John Rembold, the airport director, invites everyone to try Tailwind concessions at the terminal. He says it's a great cup of coffee.
Thank you, David. Mr. Hawkins on community services and.
Yes, no report at this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, go back to Ms. Ames again. Public planning, sir?
Well, I'm busy. The Public Planning Committee met on November 18th to receive an update on short-term rental ordinance and to vote on a resolution authorizing the inclusion of the town pathway projects into the Beaufort County Connects bicycle and pedestrian plan. The resolution was approved and forwarded to council. The next meeting for the PPC will be on December 16th, and the agenda will include short-term rentals, e-bikes, and beach parking. And I do have my notes on Sally Warren, if you want me to read those now or do it later.
Yes, sir.
Now?
Yes, please.
Sally Warren, the longest serving community manager on Hilton Head, is retiring from her 40 years of service to the shipyard community. Sally moved to the island in 1974, began working at shipyard in the early 80s, and became its general manager 30 years ago. Shipyard has benefited from her effective leadership over those years. As Shipyard's town council representative, I found Sally's knowledge and tenure valuable in addressing issues that affected shipyard residents and homeowners. Her requests on behalf of Shipyard were reasonable and well presented. I thoroughly enjoyed our interactions because of her easygoing personality and high standard of professionalism. On behalf of the council and the entire community, we thank Sally Warren for her service and wish her the best in her new endeavors. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. Mr. Lennox, Finance Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Finance Administrative Committee met today with 2 agenda items under new business. We've reviewed and discussed the affiliated agency grant application process and timing. The proposed process was well received by the committee. There will be some work done on more clearly defining some of the terms in the process. But we will be prepared to report to council on that shortly after the first of the year. The second agenda item was the 5-month report on Hilton Head Island finances. The trends that were described by John Troyer, both on the revenue and expense side, were favorable.
Just one other thing here, before we get into appearance by citizens, I want to read you something here. Section 25-70, appearance by citizens, says any citizen of the town of Hilton Head should appear before the council at a regular meeting during the appearance of citizens. There should be a member of the town, a citizen of the town. Now, I like the Bills Committee to look at this, and for years we've disregarded that. And the reason being, people that are here on visiting, people that are here for second homes, we've always wanted to get their input along the way. And I think that's important. But if the council thinks it's important enough, we should change the ordinance to include everybody else. Right now, it just says citizens of Hilton Head. But we should change, if we think so, we should change it to include guests here, second home people here, and whoever else. So Bill, I'm giving that to you. You there?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. I'd be glad to take that on.
Thank you very much. Chris, your appearance by citizens?
Yes, sir. Our first citizen to speak today is Miss Elly Short. Ms. Short.
How many do we have?
Ms. Short, please proceed.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay, my name is Elly Short, and I'd like to voice my objection to Office of Cultural Affairs Plan Funding Professional Development. Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Training, or CRT, has no place in our community, schools, and marketplace. Critical race theory is rooted in Marxism. It separates individuals into groups based on race, and it pits them against one another. Its fruit is not redemption. It's not reconciliation, restoration, and unity, but division, intimidation, harassment, and chaos. It's a threat to liberty, community, and democracy. CRT is a form of racism. It masquerades as a remedy to injustice and disunity. And I'd like to pray now for our town and nation concerning this equity, diversity, critical race theory. Lord, we come against this demonic ideology rooted in Marxism that would seek to divide our town and nation. You created man in your image, and we are all created to be your sons and daughters. And our identity is established in our status as children of God. The color of our skin was by your masterful design, and we will not apologize for how you made us, for this would be a direct assault to our Creator. We break and bind the lie over the minds and hearts of the people of our beloved nation that says that our identity is rooted in race and gender, and that white supremacy is rampant, its power is entrenched in our laws, our education, our language, and system of government. This is not true, and we stand together against this oppressive lie in Jesus' name. Lord, empower, educate, equip us to rise up and stomp down these self-destructive labels. The solution to ending racism is not another form of racism. Reveal to us and our leaders what is hidden in this dark teaching. Embolden our leaders, even in this town, to come forward with courage and confidence to speak truth and make godly decisions and good change on behalf of our town and our generation and the ones to come. We decree that Hilton Head Island and our leaders here will be an example of godly influence, honor, and justice, and they will not allow our standard of excellence to be lowered to unjust and immoral rulings. We pray that they will not cower in fear to appease these radical groups pushing this radical agenda, but give them courage to stand up for what they know is right for the people of our community. Lord, we pray for discernment for our town leaders Give them a hearing and understanding heart as to what is right and wrong, truth and lies, and good and evil. We denounce the spirit of division. We denounce the spirit of hate. We denounce the spirit of deceit in our nation and the town of Hilton Head. We decree a spirit of unity, brotherly love, and truth into our community.
Thank you, Ms.
Jesus' name. And
Short.
Lord-
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Next, sir, is Mr. Eric. I just want to remind everybody, for appearance by citizens, each citizen has 3 minutes to address the town council and the mayor. Up next, sir, is Eric Somerville. Mr. Somerville?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Okay, hello. My name is Eric Somerville. I am a citizen of Hilton Head Island. Thank you, Mr. Mark Orlando, for the excellent work that you're doing in such a short time and being here on Hilton Head Island. And thank you to Krista, who does a wonderful job in ongoing administrative support. Hello and well wishes to all the council members. I look forward to seeing you in person on the 4th. That would be great next year. We in the world and in this country are at a strange time. We have government organizations who are competing. Both the government entities desire to rule, albeit the one is a non-government organization, the other is the real government. The United States of America has its government. The United Nations of the world also looks like, acts like a government. The U.S. wants to rule the USA. The UN wants to rule the one world with one world order, the entire world. The UN has been working since 1943, soon after World War II ended, and is succeeding. U.S. has the CDC. The UN has the WHO. The UN has contributed, continues to infiltrate the U.S. Via the WHO and many other NGO organizations. All of this should be known about the UN. They've described it in detail in the Great Reset, a plan that most should know, but very few do. The Great Reset is well and live, and the current compelling target for completion is 2050. All should read it if you can. Today, the topic is OCA, and for and against. I am for and against the Office of Cultural Affairs. I'd love it to be a wonderful organization. I don't know the people there well, but I would highlight the word inclusion, which is included in their document. There's other words, but these words have double meanings these days. They have a simple definition, but they also have a UN version of a definition. If you know the Great Reset Plan, you will know the other details on that, on the word inclusion. I do not believe the Hilton Head residents who worked on the ARP plan and the OCA plan, strategic plan, were really aware of those other alternate definitions that the UN drumbeats on a regular basis. I do believe Future IQ, the consultant, and the work document that was referenced to produce our plan and the OCA plan were aware of the various definitions of the word inclusion. So at this point, I would hope and pray that this is.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville. Just one more reminder, we're keeping comments to 3 minutes today. We have a lot of citizens signed up. Our next citizen is Felicia Nescor. Ms. Nescor?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you,
Go
Krista.
ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
Felicia Nescor, Ward 4. The vitriol coming from OCA supporters at the recent town council meeting is evidence that the OCA is doing severe damage to our town by creating animosity and division. OCA supporters made baseless, hate-filled comments about anyone who opposes taxpayer funding for secret CRT training sessions calling us vigilantes, militia groups, white supremacists, racists carrying the banner of false patriotism, racists wanting to turn back the hands of time, and ignorance masquerading as patriotism. Those incendiary accusations were aimed at honorable, fair-minded citizens. CRT is opposed by the majority of Americans, including a plurality of successful Black Americans. CRT, EDI, FEL, anti-racist training, and diversity training are merely new labels for Marxist teachings. These new happy-sounding labels were created to mask their underlying tenets that pit an oppressed group against an oppressor group. But the core Marxist ideology of oppressed versus oppressor runs straight and true in all of these undertakings. Accordingly, I think that the Town should disband the OCA and eliminate the OCA budget for the following reasons. 1, taxpayer dollars should not be used for frivolous purposes that benefit only a small fraction of island residents. And more importantly, 2, any town activity that divides citizens and incites this kind of hatred should be eliminated. No matter what label is applied to it, CRT is a cancer that divides and destroys. Those who promote this cancer are telling our precious children that they should judge their friends by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character. CRT proponents endorse the bigotry of low expectations, telling our Black children that they're oppressed and cannot succeed, and telling our white children that they're oppressors and should feel guilty about things that happened centuries ago. Children should be taught to love each other, be good to each other, and help each other achieve success, and adults should model these positive behaviors instead of preaching hate and division. CRT is fueled by the politics of envy and blames disparate economic outcomes on systemic racism instead of individual decisions each citizen makes about education, career choice, sacrifice, perseverance, and risk-taking. Under the CRT model, Dr. Ben Carson, a world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon who came from very humble beginnings, would make the same salary as your landscaper. Every productive citizen deserves our respect, but the neurosurgeon certainly deserves greater monetary rewards as his contributions are of much higher value. CRT, in all of its incarnations, undermines that paradigm. The concept of personal responsibility built the most prosperous, successful, and inclusive economic engine in recorded history. The ultimate goal of CRT, EDI, etc., is to collapse that economic engine, eliminate all financial disparities, and rebuild our society into an equitable, socialist, Marxist utopia. That same ideology brought devastation, genocide, and famine to China, Russia, and Cuba under Mao, Stalin, and Castro, and that could happen here in the USA. We need to work together, starting at the local level, to prevent that, and disbanding the OCA would be a great start. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Felicia. Next, we have Sherry Bittner. Ms. Bittner?
Hi, Krista, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Hi, this is Sherry Bittner, 47 Shelter Cove Lane. I'm very concerned about the Office of Cultural Affairs strategic plan being adopted, even though DEI has been removed. I listened to the 3-hour taxpayer-funded video on diversity training that the OCA hosted. I heard members of the arts community use incendiary terms like white supremacy and white privilege. One attendee said, quote, "I think honestly we have to start teaching institutional racism in an honest way, beginning at the elementary school," end of quote. It was suggested that they pretty much can't change the mindset of adults, but that they can focus on the kids. In my opinion, the ideology of institutionalized racism tragically insists that we inform young white children that they were the oppressors while reminding minorities that they were the oppressed. To indoctrinate our children in this fashion under the guise of the truly noble terms, equity and inclusion, is a toxic strategy that tragically pits white children against Black children. It has been reported that children have experienced depression and other emotional problems who have been told that solely because of their whiteness or the fact that their ancestors induced harm, that they somehow are also guilty of oppression. This is incredibly damaging to our young generation, and in actuality, sets us back as a nation. In my opinion, a tragedy of what proponents of DEI are doing, in part, is they undermine the very foundations of all the significant racial progress America has made and continues to make. I didn't hear anyone from the Hilton Head Arts during those 3 hours acknowledge positive changes, that during the period following the end of slavery, it was white philanthropy that set up schools across the South and set up those historically Black colleges and universities, and that since the end of slavery, trillions of dollars have been funded to address the past and present effects of our history. How is it that members of the OCA-sponsored diversity training appear to be unaware that to be judged solely on the color of skin is in itself racist. So even though DEI has been removed from the strategic plan, it still permits these same groups to influence young people with their ideologies under the guise of the arts through the town's residency program and potentially eventually into the schools. So by adopting this plan, it is my view that the town council is unwittingly being complicit in perpetuating this divisive ideology. Members of the town council, it takes great courage to stand up against this. As an elected official, to go along to get along is in fact enabling those damaging ideologies to infect our community. This is your duty. This is our duty to our impressionable children as well as to our community to stop this.
Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Next, we have Susan Guerra Russo. Ms. Guerra Russo. Susan? Ms. Guerra Russo. Susan, are you on the line?
Krista, she is on the line, but has not unmuted herself.
Okay. Can we go ahead and move on to our next person, which is Shodan Lee, Miss Lee? Miss Lee, Shodan Lee.
Krista, Ms. Lee is on and shows is unmuted.
Miss Lee, please go ahead. Your 3 minutes has started.
Hi, this is Susan G. Russo. I unmuted now.
Oh, okay. Ms. G. Russo, if you want to go ahead and begin.
Great. Mine is shorter than the 3 minutes. My name is Susan G. Russo, and I live in Palmetto Dunes on Hilton Head Island. I'd like to make some comments on the Office of Cultural Affairs Strategic Plan. To start, I would like to thank my council member, Tamara Becker, for exercising her good judgment by requesting that the prior approval be rescinded so that a more thoughtful and thorough review of the document could be performed. It was a shame that this action prompted a false accusation of racism by a fellow council member who did so behind the back to the local newspaper. Being said, while this plan is certainly not perfect, it will better serve the needs of all Hilton Head Island residents, so I think it should be approved. One specific objection I do take pertains to the section on professional development resource identification, number 4 in the strategy section. I do not believe that taxpayer dollars should be spent on professional development, especially when one isn't responsive to the needs of its members, which appears to be the case here. The results of the member survey in Appendix 5 clearly shows that the members did not think that DEI training is a priority. It actually ranked dead last, with only 9 of 54 respondents identifying it as a need. Yet this is one of only 2 training sessions held to date. Why? After watching a 20-minute segment of the training provided, I got my answer. In the short span of time, the word white supremacy, indoctrination, and voter suppression, surprisingly, as it pertained to the state of Georgia, like that is any business of the OCA, were mentioned. This clearly shows the partisanship of the council and the ideological agenda it is pursuing. What was very disturbing was to see the assistant town manager's eager participation in the session and her stating that town staff was looking to implement similar training throughout the town. I do not want one dime of my tax dollars on these divisive, hateful, and factually untrue policies. There should be no place for it on Hilton Head Island, including and maybe most importantly in schools. Parents are responsible for teaching their children about life and society. Education and educators should focus on, to use an old moniker, the 3 R's and other academic subjects. This is especially true on Hilton Head Island since many of the public school students are not at grade level. Schools and other community groups have no place in influencing children, frequently without parental knowledge or approval in non-academic areas. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am. Shodan Lee. Ms. Lee. Shodan, are you on the line?
Krista, once again, she's on the line and unmuted, but we cannot hear her.
Okay.
Hi, Krista. Krista?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Lee, go ahead.
Thank you. Town Council, before you proceed to vote on the Office of Cultural Affairs Strategic Plan for the next 3 years, please help us understand the Office of Cultural Affairs' key functions and responsibilities. Without the first step, it will be difficult to define goals and hold down officials accountable. After reviewing the 40-plus page document, which was created with the Arts Council of Hilton Head, I surmise that the OCA's intention is to promote and market the arts and cultural organizations, organize the annual Lantern Parade and Crescendo Festival, and promote social justice through diversity, equity, and inclusion. The question is, if you believe in small government, should the town government establish a department specifically catering to one sector, which already benefits from tax exemption status? Cities of Asheville, Beaufort, Bluffton, and Mount Pleasant are all tourist destinations with rich culture and art scenes. Yet none of them have offices of culture affairs. The efforts are either led by volunteer committees or nonprofit organizations. We have another example at home. The RBC Heritage Tournament is a huge tourist draw and a reputation-enhancing event for Hilton Head Island, and it's organized by the private sector, with the town government contributes $250,000 through accommodation tax funds. So why can't we adopt the same structure for the Lantern Parade and the annual Crescendo celebration? It should not be the government's job, or more precisely, the taxpayers' responsibility to fund the operations of arts communities permanently. Cultural heritage can only be sustained when community leaders accentuate what unites us and not what divides us. When citizens are encouraged to respect each other and to take personal responsibility in a sense of duty to one's family, neighbors, and the community. The second aspect of the OCC's function as social justice warrior is more troubling. For example, one of its ideals of excellence is attracting and maintaining a diverse and multi-dimensional residential population. If multi-dimensions include economic status, should the poor remain in poverty in order to satisfy OCA's maintenance of a diverse residential population? Its interpretation of DEI, as referenced in the ICMA's website, is race and victimhood focused. Because of CRT's remarkable ability to shift into whatever form its advocates choose, Governor Henry McMaster signed into law a budget proviso in July to prohibit any partisan curriculum, not just the academic study of CRT, but its implementations through DEI and SEL. Clearly, the OCA's strategic plan attempts to solve a problem that does not exist. By doing so, it creates division among Hilton Head Island residents. So, town council member, we cannot let it happen. One last question: how much will it cost tax?
Next, sir, is Matt Sweeney. Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Sweeney, please proceed.
Mr. Mayor and Town Council, my comments are related to the Office of Cultural Affairs, whose strategic plan clearly outlines things that one or more philanthropies should be doing, not a government office. Governments, including the Township of Hilton Head, are structured to issue licenses, ensure compliance with codes and standards, and oversee the fire department and EMS to keep residents safe. Government is not designed to raise funds other than taxes, which have directly correlated and justifiable expenses. Governments are also not built to dispense charity. A report by the Philanthropy Roundtable concluded that individually tailored approaches, such as putting art in public spaces, artists in residence for various grade levels of school, and once-a-year arts events were accomplished more effectively and efficiently by philanthropies than government. I know you understand this because it was just a month ago that the Town Council voted to surrender its responsibility to distribute $1 million in COVID relief funds to a philanthropy on the island. I read more than a dozen IRS Form 990 reports for arts-related nonprofits on the island. Just 3 of them, the Arts Center of Coastal Carolina, the Symphony, and the Lean Ensemble Theater, listed in aggregate more than 50 board members and executive staff. and together had received almost $1 million in government grants in a single year. Those and other island nonprofits working with the Chamber of Commerce should be more than capable to provide and market local arts and cultural offerings. A few years ago, some academics evaluated 71 different studies comparing the efficiency of offerings of the same service from public agencies and private organizations. They concluded that nonprofits were more cost-effective than their government counterparts 80% of the time. The latest USC Beaufort survey showed that 3 times more visitors come to Hilton Head for dolphin tours, fishing, and kayaking than they do for festivals and art activities. Why don't we have an Office of Aquatic Activities? The government should get out of the way and not pick winners and losers. Please vote down the OCA strategic plan and eliminate that department from our government. Thank you.
Ashley Phillips. Miss Phillips?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Ashley Phillips, and I'm a full-time resident of Hilton Head Island. I have watched the training video of the Office of Cultural Affairs by the consultant Jorge Zeballos, who was paid $3,000 by our town government. In case there are people who have not watched the video or know who he is a self-proclaimed radical, and his position as Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer at Kellogg Community College in Michigan was eliminated in early 2020. The elimination of his position coincidentally coincides with a Facebook post showing him holding a sign featuring expletives at a protest against Donald Trump in December of 2019. Was this the best consultant our tax dollars could afford? Who chose him? How was he vetted? And who approved the payment? There are many things in this training video that are alarming. However, I will only speak to a few. If the art groups want to promote the arts, I think that's a great thing, but that is not what they were talking about doing in this video. One of the things mentioned was how to get DEI into our schools. It is up to the school board to decide what is taught in the schools, not any town employee or any of these art groups. The Office of Cultural Affairs strategic plan should not be approved. The town government should serve the interest of all citizens and businesses, not just special interest groups. It is not our town government's job to promote social justice agendas. I quite frankly find it disturbing that all town council members, with the exception of Ms. Becker, initially approved the strategic plan without even knowing or understanding what was in it. As an island, we are diverse. We are multicultural. We are inclusive. We come from all places around the country to live on this wonderful island. Can we do better? Always. But do not create issues we don't have. Stop trying to divide us and stay out of social justice agendas. It's not your job. We have very big issues facing our island, like figuring out our workforce housing crisis and protecting our Gullah families and their land. The mayor, town council, and town manager should focus on these issues. The future of our island depends on it. Thank you.
Lisa Laking. Lisa Laking, Miss Laking?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Martin Luther King Jr. That is exactly what Tamara Becker has done in this whole issue with this EDI training. Against great pushback and what I would go so far as to say blatant slander, she's held her ground, and it's on the basis of exactly what she was elected to do, and that was represent the people. She simply asked for definitions of the wording that was in the previous strategic plan and the revised one as well, clarity of the long-term implications of that wording, and very importantly, financial accountability and transparency with our taxpayer dollars. I second the third caller's sentiment about abolishing the OCA, as that department has strayed from the initial good intentions and are now agenda driven in spite of the fact that the EDI training ranked lowest in a recent survey of priorities, which was also mentioned by another caller. Additionally, I vehemently oppose the mayor's idea to limit who can address the town council. There are, I believe anybody who lives, works, and plays on this island has a right to how it's all set up. Second, homeowners pay more in taxes, for starters. What about all of the many thousands who live in Bluffton and come here to work? Their voices matter. Many of them are the ones struggling the most, and you're going to further marginalize Hispanic and African American people. So I just think I will follow up on that as it works its way through. I just wanted to say that I have extreme respect for Tammy and her standing up at this time, and I don't think that I personally would agree with everything that's in the plan, even the revised one, but I'm going to trust Tammy to do what's right, and the rest of you should do the same. Thanks.
Jonathan Wilson, Mr. Wilson. Mr.
Yes,
Wilson.
hello, Mayor, members of Town Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. My name is Jonathan Wilson. I grew up on Hilton Head and just returned to the island last year after 25 years in California. When I was growing up here in the 70s and 80s, the arts community flourished, thanks in large part to the island's founding mother, Mary Fraser, whose vision for the arts relied on community support and involvement. Back then, arts organizations needed funding and support from the community, and I think that encouraged islanders to participate. As a kid, I was very active in the old community playhouse on Dunnigan's Alley, which was funded and supported entirely by the community. In fact, the community playhouse played a big part in my pursuit of a career in the entertainment industry. While the Arts Center is great, it doesn't seem as accessible for participation to residents. More than anything, the community playhouse brought people together in a special way. That's exactly what the art should do, bring a community together. Sadly, the controversy over the Office of Cultural Affairs strategic plan seems to be dividing our community. I think this is a direct result of the OCA's perceived intentions to promote a version of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that includes elements of critical race theory. As we have seen, this hateful ideology is tearing communities apart across the country. And why wouldn't it? It encourages people to view others based on the color of their skin and not the content of their characters. For my 25 years in California, I witnessed the corrosive effects that critical race theory had on communities. In my opinion, it has played a big part in the downfall of the once golden state, not to mention what it's done to the film and television industry. We cannot let that happen here on Hilton Head. Our community is too valuable. Let's focus on what we have in common, a love for this beautiful island. I don't think the town of Hilton Head should subsidize the island's arts organizations. It's simply not their role. Unfortunately, it's likely the town council will approve OCA's strategic plan. In that event, I ask that town leaders be vigilant with regard to critical race theory, and I call on all islanders to get involved and support the arts. Just like government, the arts will decay without citizen participation. Thank you for your time.
Ray Smith. Mr. Smith. Gray Smith, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith is on, but he's still muted.
I see that. I'm going to go ahead and move to Cherry Norris. Ms. Norris.
There she is. She's at the top.
Ms. Norris, Cherry. Cherry Norris, Ms. Norris, are you on the line?
I'm on the line. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Hi, you all. I'm glad to follow Jonathan because I love theater. I have been involved in theater and the arts all my life. I've been on every side of stage and film. I
also spent 30 years in LA, acting, writing, directing, producing. I love the arts. And I think the Coastal Arts Center here is incredible. They do great work. And when I saw Mamma Mia in August,
For an audience of local.
What's happening? Can you hear me? The thing is not going.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can hear you just fine. Please proceed.
Okay. Anyway, no, Mamma Mia was absolutely wonderful, and they had everybody on their feet, and I was super excited for this new season. I love the shows. I could not wait to take my young friend to see Elf for her very first show. I was a donor, a very sizable donor to the arts, but as I was getting ready to buy season subscription tickets and make another hefty contribution, I saw masks are required. And if anybody knows how I feel about masks, it's all of you on town council, because we spent 10 months working to overturn the mask mandate. And just for the record, I am not anti-mask, I am pro-choice. What I find very disturbing is that everyone is included to come to the theater except a ticket buyer who won't cover their face. And the symphony requires a vax passport, even though there are no mask mandates or vax passports required in Hilton Head. This does not feel inclusive. It feels very divisive. Now, I want to say organizations have every right to do business the way they want. However, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going through government subsidies to nonprofit entities when I can't attend the show because I refuse to suffocate or show my papers. If they exclude ticket buyers, they need to be on the free market system and let the public decide if they want to support them or not. Otherwise, let's be equitable. And if we're doing that, I vote to support businesses like Ruby Lee's, where everyone's included. Black, white, liberal, conservative, mask, no mask, everyone's welcome for soul food and dancing. I am really opposed for the government entities to support businesses who are acting like private businesses, even though they exclude the public. This is not inclusive at all. That said, I do support Tammy Becker.
Thank you, Ms. Norris.
Grace Smith.
Grace Smith, please go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Okay. Yes, this is Grace Smith. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Okay. Well, are you going to restart the 3 minutes?
Hello. Go ahead, sir. It's been restarted. Please proceed.
Okay. My name is Grace Smith, and I live at 11 Weilers Creek Way on Hilton Head Island. I'm here to vehemently object to the obvious agenda of the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs to infiltrate the Hilton Head elementary and secondary schools utilizing local artists under the guise of, quote, art education to communicate the extremely divisive and deleterious message of critical race theory, referred to by those who are pushing this agenda as equity, diversity, inclusion. Towards this end, a 3-hour, quote, training seminar was organized by the director of the Office of Cultural Affairs for an audience of local artists and conducted by a radical individual who was fired from Kellogg Community College in Battle Creek, Michigan, after displaying profanity-ridden signs at a Trump rally. We Hilton Head residents had the privilege of paying $3,000 for his services. Those who think that it is the task of Hilton Head town government to inform our white students that they are, quote, white supremacists and privileged because of their whiteness, and our black students that they are, quote, victims and have been for the last 500 years in this country, deny vehemently that that is what they are looking to communicate as they use art education to carry the message of equity, diversity, inclusion into our local classrooms. Yet a few very direct quotes taken from the video of the training seminar hosted by our town government appear to me to reveal very clearly what their clandestine and divisive agenda is. Allow me a few quotes. Quote, "This is a safe space. What we say here stays in this room." Quote, we do plan to offer future EDI training sessions. Quote, 80% of the history of this country has been spent under different systems of legalized racial division. Quote, I would describe these periods as, quote, white supremacy. And then the final two, I think honestly, we have to start teaching institutional racism in an honest way, beginning in elementary school. And finally, quote, you have to start early. You have to start with the earliest education of the children. And there you have it. It's very obvious that the agenda of the Director of the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs is to train local artists to go into our Hilton Head elementary schools and, by your own admission, inculcate in our children the overriding thesis of institutional racism. That intention to racially divide our young children into privileged whites and victimized blacks is and should be repulsive to everyone in the room today. And it should be absolutely unacceptable that any facet of our town government should play an active role in facilitating the delivery of such a message into our schools. For the above reasons, I would ask that you withhold adoption of the Office of Cultural Affairs strategic plan until such time as the terms equity, diversity, and inclusion can be clearly defined and entered into the town plan glossary.
Patsy Bryson, Miss Bryson. Go ahead, Patsy, you're all
Yes,
set.
good afternoon. This is Patsy Bryson. Can you hear me, Ms. Wiedemeyer?
Thank you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can. Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Patsy Bryson, representing the Coalition of Island Neighbors, or COIN. I would be remiss if I didn't join the town council in mourning the loss of our public servant, Gail Quick. She was a valuable ally of COIN, and we will miss her. I'm here to speak on two items on your agenda, 12B and C. First of all, the fiscal year 2021-2022 strategic plan, and secondly, the redistricting process. First of all, COIN supports our plan and its implementation. It is a monumental task to develop a plan for its implementation, and we express our thanks to the town manager and staff for taking on that task. We do, however, suggest postponement at this time because the draft strategic plan was only made public on this past Friday. It's over 277 pages long, including complex charts. Also, the draft does not organize actions by fiscal year, and it's difficult to find the priorities for FY 2021 and 2022 without a careful review of the details. COIN urges town council to carefully review the strategic plan and to focus on this fiscal year, and to require quarterly reports to the public on implementation of our plan, including its funding. The dashboard reports used by the town on its website are helpful for that purpose. Secondly, with regard to redistricting, once again, COIN thanks the town staff for setting a population variance of no more than 5% in its criteria. COIN also thanks the town staff for revising the process, but is disappointed that the revisions do not include the task force and timeline suggested by COIN for public input. The proposed process includes a public charrette and public workshops, but the outline does not define or differentiate those terms. COIN suggests that the task force representatives suggested in COIN's proposal be specifically invited to the public charrette to assist with soliciting public input and providing public input. The process still includes individual meetings with town staff and including the GIS staff. COIN suggests that this should be open meeting of the town council or its finance and administration committee and not closed meetings. Finally, there's no public hearing on adoption of the new maps. In addition, the timeline is too compressed to accomplish the process outlined, including the public charrette, meetings with town GIS staff, and public workshops for final action by the Finance and Administration Committee on February 15, 2022. We do admire the work of the Finance and Administration Committee, but believe this timeline is too compressed. The timeline should and can be extended to provide for meaningful public transparency and input. It is what you do with the time you have that is important. Thank you.
Mr. Hoagland? Skip Hoagland.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, please proceed.
Afternoon, Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. Also on the agenda today is a continued illegal issuance and use of tax funds by all nonprofits. Please note it's a violation of South Carolina constitutional law to use tax funds to subsidize nonprofits that use for private purposes that do not benefit the public good, reason, or benefits. It's also illegal and worse to use tax funds for private nonprofits like the 501c6 Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber, who commits tax evasion on UBIT, unrelated business income tax. It's also illegal for the town to keep hiring the chamber without first conducting a fair, transparent procurement bid process in order to choose the legal right entity for the job. Further, town manager Mark Orlando and lawyer Gruber, also council members, use public money illegally to buy chamber memberships for themselves. Therefore, as chamber members, they have no business voting on or approving any public dollars to any organization in which they are members. Add the chamber itself is unfairly competing, selling advertising against its own members in violation to their own members because they steadfastly refuse access to their books and records under the South Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Act law. And they do this as secret sauce, which is outrageous. Aside from these blatant conflicts of interest, the town should cease funding any nonprofits until they have a valid contract, they're legally operated, proper accounting controls, and a way to measure their performance in providing a return to the taxpayers. Tamara, I supported you yesterday on this Office of Cultural Affairs issue discussion. I now ask you to stop this illegal tax funding to Bill Miles and this chamber and force him to abide by South Carolina and federal laws by turning over all the chamber accounting on where the millions of our tax funds have disappeared, including over 1 million to Canada. In addition, town must comply to my ATAX FOIA and now South Carolina Turk, who asked you and all council members to abide by their directive. Tamara, as a council member, this is not about you picking what issues you want the town to act lawfully on. It's about all the issues. Any council member that votes in favor of more illegal funding to Bill Miles, who claims his use of tax money is secret sauce and no one's business, must be investigated, removed from public service, and those who facilitated this secret tax robbery with Bill Miles should be arrested. This council's dysfunction, corruption, lies, fraud, and illegal use of millions of tax funds must end, and legal operations and insanity restored. Also, Mr. McCann, trips to Italy, first-class tickets, fraudulent chamber contracts, $150 lunches on taxpayers' dime. This corrupt buffoonery is over. You must stop also violating free speech. If you don't want to be criticized by me and others, then you stop your public corruption and clean up your act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Have a nice day. So
Thank
that concludes appearance by citizens.
Thank you for all the citizens that appeared today. Item number 11.
Yes.
Item number 11, consideration of resolution, approval of revised resolution authorizing and dedicating the acceptance of Main Street. This is a consent item we've talked about in the past. Does anybody have any comments on this?
Mayor McCann, we've lost connection with Mr. Harkins, Ms. Becker, and Mr. Stanford, and IT has run down there real quick to get them back online.
Okay.
Want to take a couple minute recess? I would just
take a 2-minute recess.
Renee, can you hear us okay? Are we good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Excellent. Thank
Testing,
you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you.
Where's,
Now we've lost the mayor.
yeah.
What did you do, Bill?
He touched the button.
Tammy sneezed.
Yes.
So wait a second for Mark.
I can't find my.
Okay, sir. Okay, item number 11, the consent agenda. That's revised resolution for the authorization and dedication of the acceptance of Main Street. This is a consent item. Anybody have any discussion on that?
No, if you'd like.
Just raise the right hand.
We need a motion to approve that.
We need a motion to approve. Okay.
Move for approval.
Second. Okay, all right. All in favor, raise the right hand. Thank you very much. Okay. New business. Consideration of resolution for the adoption of the Office of Cultural Affairs Strategic Plan. I was going to read along the CAD thing I have about how long it took to get here and what we did and everything. But you all know that already, so let's save a lot of time and move on.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Hawkins.
I'm not sure if I heard you too well, but if this is relative to the OCA?
Yes.
Yes.
It's item number 12A.
I would like to redefine strategy for page 6, entitled Professional Development Resource Identification, with the following. The OCA, in its effort to assist local arts and cultural organizations with its mission and goals of achieving an inclusive and multidimensional community, will provide on its website, as a matter of public record, a listing of external resources which may help these organizations with the training topics listed in Appendix 5-2019 to 2019 Professional Development Survey Results Survey Summary.
Okay, do I have a second on Mr. Hawkins' motion?
I'll second.
Who's that, Glenn?
Yes, second.
Okay.
So procedurally,
we got a discussion on that.
I was gonna say, normally we take up a motion and a second before there's discussion. We haven't done that, but the motion was made and adopted to amend the matter pending before the board. So now would be appropriate to take comment on the matter as amended.
Okay, let's talk about the matter as amended. We might as well start in order. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't able to, excuse me, write as fast as Councilman Hawkins was speaking.
I'll be glad to repeat it.
Thank you, sir.
Slowly, Bill.
All right. Mr. Mayor, do I have your pleasure to repeat it?
Yes, you do. Slowly.
Okay. The OCA, in its effort to assist local arts and cultural organizations with its mission and goals of achieving an inclusive and multidimensional community, will provide on its website, as a matter of public record, a listing of external resources which may assist these organizations or those organizations with training topics listed in Appendix 5-2019 Professional Development Survey Results Survey Summary, period.
Alex.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Hawkins.
My pleasure.
I guess the portion that I'm going to focus on, there's a sentence here that says such assistance will be based on topic feedback and surveys of cultural community members. I understand that we're going to list the current survey results. Are we speaking to just the current survey results with your change there, or are we still allowing the opportunity for the community members to give feedback in the future.
If that question is directed toward me, it's accepted at literally, it refers to that listing, period.
And Mr. Brown, you would like that to be altered to say as ongoing surveys from the public. Is that right? Is that what I hear?
Absolutely.
Okay. What's the feelings on Mr. Brown's comments?
Well, I'll jump in and speak up since there's a silence. The listing as addressed in the motion came directly from the previous strategic plan. It was those results that were those items in those results that were identified by the arts community through a survey to 177 organizations, I believe, as I recall the number.
Correct.
And so I think that's a large swath of arts community responses that have been identified and statistically analysis done of them and included in an appendix C of, I believe, number 5 of this document. So those are their desires and wishes. And so I think at this point, that should be where we find what we're looking to approve in this strategic plan. So I would respectfully request that we leave it in their original words and desires and input with regard to the responses on the survey. So.
Thank you, Mayor. It's, I shake my head. We should not be excluding the possibility for the OCA to have surveys in the future. If this language is doing that, then it should be amended. If the language doesn't exclude that from happening in the future, then I accept it.
I don't think it excludes them. If I may, as maker of the motion, it's not, my thought is not to prohibit the OCA at some point in time. If they want to refresh a survey, so be it.
Let me give you my comment, okay? I agree with Alex that there ought to be periodic surveys to update the information we have, because in 6 months or a year, the world will have changed. I agree with Mr. Brown.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Well,
we all agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's consistent with my intent. My modification was never intended to place a limitation on enjoying input from others in the future through a survey mechanism. I'm just dealing with the facts as they are today.
Tom?
John, I think you can address that, and I agree with Alex and David by simply saying by the topics described in Appendix 5, comma, but not limited to, comma, a listing. If you add the words but not limited to, that opens it up for future surveys and future topics.
You guys okay with that? You okay? Yeah. All right. As the maker of the motion,
wait a minute, David, you okay with that?
Yeah. No, I just want the door to be open for input in the future.
Okay. As the maker of the motion, Bill, do you change your motion?
Yeah, as the maker of the motion, I'd be delighted to modify it as suggested.
Is there a second? Is there a second for that motion as amended? Is there any more discussion on the motion? For the record. For the record.
I have a question and a comment. The question and clarification, I guess, is really, so it's clearly understood that this is an external resource list to be posted on the website, and that the organizations are free to utilize the resource list to go into the greater community here in the state, across the country or nation or world, to find those workshops, et cetera, that the organizations are looking for. That this is for them to take the information provided as guidance, as a resource for them to find their professional development needs elsewhere, but not here within Town Hall, correct? We're all on the same page with that.
Correct.
Okay, well, having said that, and I'm assuming I heard nothing, so I'd like verification of that, because that is my understanding. Is that what we're?
I'll speak as the maker of the motion.
Thank you so much.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and then one last thing that I'd like to say. The changes are acceptable to me, and as we're proceeding forward to create an opportunity here for to move forward. One of the, we listened to a lot of comments, both today and in previous meetings. One that we were unable to hear from, but I want to make that voice heard. And I will try not to one, lose my voice, but also not to break up. David Ames was kind enough earlier to read a very emotional tribute to someone who I admired, who was a mentor to me, an advisor, and a friend, and that is Ms. Gail Quick. And she and I stayed in touch on many topics and debated, and she gave me good advice. We often, if not always, quite frankly, agreed. October 20th of 2021, I received an email from Gail. Her email was, I and many others agree on your stance on this issue relating to Arts Council. Gail Quick would want us to make these changes that have now come forward and to look to the future for what's right for Hilton Head Island. So with all the respect that we've heard here today and admiration, we will miss her today.
Mr. Corbin, please continue.
Thank you for the opportunity. Going to slides 42 through 46, this is now an expansion associated with our new cash flow projections and actual expenditures. You heard me speak that during the mid-program reset, that was the last exercise that needed to be done. Because of that reset and changing some budgets and schedules, that cash flow model we wanted to remodel. It's been remodeled, and I've provided you all of the years worth of data so that you see not only what remains this year, but for all of the next 2 years in the first quarter of 2024. The other information that I put at the bottom of each page is a recap of the total bond sales that have occurred to date. There's been 2. The total of those equate to $205 million worth of funding. You can see that at the bottom, that under the new cash flow model, that these additional funds need to be in place prior to the end of August of next year. And when you compare it to the data at the bottom that I added for the previous cash flow model, it was showing that we needed those additional funds to be in place prior to the end of July. So though we had some changes in the near term, by middle of next year, we're back in line with the proximity of what we had forecast under our version 2. I'm referring to this model as version 3 for cash flow purposes. And we have shared this information with Tanya Crosby so that she can have it as she works towards looking at the necessary steps so that approvals and bond sales and closings can all take place, so those proceeds are in place before they're needed. And then wrapping it up, talk a little bit about our community outreach.
The only other thing I'd add is that we did add, you'll see 2024. We didn't have that previously, so now with Robert Smalls and a little bit of the other projects, we will be bleeding into 2024.
That first quarter. Yeah, and that's what maybe when I said it, I wasn't clear enough. Thank you, Robert, for providing that clarity. The previous model didn't have it. We were showing that, or the original plan, we were trying to get everything finished. Under the mid-program reset, we will be reaching substantial completion on these projects, but we all realize that the closeout and final payments take a little bit of time, and that's really the purpose in showing those additional expenditures coming in that first quarter of 24. And to wrap it up, slide 48, community outreach. We already mentioned earlier that the groundbreaking took place at Robert Smalls this afternoon. I think it was well attended and very successful. The other item that we want to talk about relates to Hilton Head Island Middle School. We do have that review meeting with the administration and the School Improvement Council scheduled. That's scheduled for December 14th. That's the step that we wanted to make sure that all of those stakeholders are well versed, have the opportunity to ask any questions. We respond to them. And then in January, we are coordinating currently that community meeting to take place in January. And just as soon as we have that date and time set up, we'll send information out to the operation committee, the full board, as well as the full clock.
One more item. I didn't catch it before, but there's also a St. Helena SIC community update on that project on December 14th.
You're correct. Yeah, we found out about that this afternoon when Robert and I were meeting with Augustine, who's the project manager. He probably got that locked in.
What time? So the St. Helena meeting is at 6 o'clock. The Hilton Head Middle School meeting, I believe, is at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And what is that meeting in reference to St. Helena? It's an update on the progress of the gym project.
And that's still scheduled on the same date, December 14th, right? But 6 p.m. for that.
Zoom or in person?
I believe both of them are gonna, I know they're in person. I think they'll have Zoom functions.
You let us know. Okay. We also, because that's our board meeting.
I'll take a note on that, and I'll take the lead for you, Robert. I will follow up with Augustine, and then I'll share the details with board service.
Unfortunately, that's when they had their, I can't make that, that's just their SIC meeting date.
I know, and that happens.
I'm just not going to be able to Zoom it.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so Mr. Corbin, couple questions. Anybody like to? That was presented.
Want me to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to work backwards. That's what's freshest in my mind, right?
Sure.
I'm looking, I love the new expenditure form going in. What I did notice as I was looking through my projects for my constituents is that really we're going to be finishing up about November of 2023. Looks like we're going to be close to 100% of the Hilton Head Island.
Discussion on this. This is not the redistricting, but the approval to do the redistricting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Lennox.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make council aware that I have spoken with the members of F&A committee individually, talking about the timeline that we have in using this process. We all recognize that it is compressed. It's going to be tight. It has the proper amount of public interaction, but it's going to require a lot of work from staff and the committee, but we are prepared to undertake it.
Be a lot of work.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown, could you make sure, I know you do already, that you attend Tom's finance meeting I think your input is very important.
Oh, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I'll be there.
Just moving on.
May I jump in here? I believe
David
Alex.
First. David's first. David.
Oh, David had his hands up. Sorry.
There's been comment about public hearing. I'm comfortable that we are going to incorporate the public in a way that they're satisfied that their input has been heard. Secondly, does this vote today limit the flexibility of the 5%, or do we have a choice on looking at whether we can go to 10% or something in between?
It's part of the resolution, David, as presented, yes.
Okay. My thought is, Mayor, that a more important ingredient or factor is community of interest. And so I would rather not get into a situation where the arbitrary 5% limits our ability to reflect community of interest. So I would suggest that we have some latitude as within the process to recognize community of interest as more important than the arbitrary 5%, or simply put it up to 10% where it was in 2010. That's the way we did it back then.
Mr. Glover, your comment?
So from a procedural standpoint, what we would need is a motion to amend, because what is pending before the body.
I'd leave it the way it is.
The target would be 5%.
I think so. Glenn,
Wait a minute, listen.
just leave it the way it is, isn't it?
No. Let's address David's comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in order to effectuate a change to the resolution, we would need a formal motion to change that percentage. In response to the question about communities of interest within the resolution, one of the ways in which we've tried to address that is by stating as a policy goal of this redistricting process that any minority representations that are currently present based upon the demographic data that was provided to us by the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office be protected and maintained as part of the redrawing efforts. So that was our intent, to ensure that the communities of interest be respected as part of this process going forward, and at the same time achieve a 5% deviation.
Does that answer your question, David?
Well, no, it does not. It does not answer the issue of flexibility, which I think is going to be important given the little bit of review I've done looking at the maps as they stand now. I think we're going to have greater flexibility to make this work.
Would you like to make a motion to that, David?
I would make a motion that we adopt what was adopted in 2010.
To be determined when we get into the process.
Be quiet over there.
Wants 5%.
Bill,
we're choosing.
Bill, David's talking.
Yeah.
Be quiet. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I hear almost a quorum of council deciding what should be done. My motion is that we use 10%.
Does anybody second David's motion?
I'll second it, but I want to make a comment to Mr. Ames' concern there, if I could. I mean, I don't mind seconding the motion. I just wanted to see if I can help here. First of all, I think this opportunity that we're going to have to engage with our public through this process is going to be absolutely critical to us having a good product at the end of the day. Okay, so I appreciate what staff is putting together there. Because Hilton Head
it appears Mr. Brown his connection has frozen.
Mr. Brown, can you hear us?
Define a lot of different ways, negotiations throughout the island. Am I frozen?
Yes, you were.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure where I left off, but I was trying to make the point of the community of interest. Okay, and I understand that we're including that verbiage in this resolution, but because that definition of community of interest could be anywhere. I mean, we've got property owners associations that are not necessarily behind gates, okay? And I feel as if limiting ourselves to 5% may limit us down the road, okay? I've seen this with what has happened at the county's redistricting efforts, okay? So, I don't know if 10% is the number. We're only referring to that because that's what is allowed. I'm assuming that the 5% is here based on the recommendation from the Fiscal Affairs Committee. However, in 2011, we did adopt 10% as a community. So just allowing some flexibility there, I think is important to us if we're wanting to achieve that ultimate goal of protecting the community of interest.
I make 10.
Okay. All right, now, David made a motion, Alex seconded.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment if I might.
Wait a minute, please. David made a motion, Alex seconded. Is there any discussion on David's motion? Mr. Glenn.
Thank you. I don't really have a problem with stating that the 10% would be the max, but I think that our goal should be to get as close to 5% as we can, and nothing in this motion would limit us to just 10%, which is the same thing that Alex was saying just now. So I think we probably have more flexibility. I was not aware, frankly, of the 10% gap from 10 years ago.
Any other comment on David's proposal? Tom?
Yes, John, if the goal is 6277 in each ward, 10% would allow the deviation to be 5% less than the 6277, and the highest populated ward would be 5% above the 6277. So that's the 10% variance, 5 below and 5 above. I think it makes sense. I would be more sensitive to maintaining communities of interest than I would necessarily one person, one vote.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Brown, I see you coming up there.
What does that mean?
Mr. Brown.
I concur with
Councilman
Lennox.
You go, okay. Tammy?
So two things. I was looking for clarification on what Tom had just said. And, but my comment before was you had asked that Alex attend the finance meetings. If I just want to correct something, I think he's on the finance committee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the alternate. So I would like that invitation, please, to participate in those meetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bill, you get your hand up. I can't see you in the back.
Yeah.
Bill.
Oh, all right. I think moving to the 10%, my understanding mathematically is it can swing from 1 to 10. Let's have that flexibility and see where it brings us. I think we all want to do the right thing.
Sure.
We want to do the best thing for the community. And we want to engender support from all people of the community for this. So I'm okay with that.
You want to reword your amendment, your motion there, David, so we know what it is?
How is it stated within the document, Josh?
Right now it's stated as 5% is the goal. What I would say based upon the comments we've heard tonight is be a not to exceed 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we would amend it to.
That would be my motion then. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that? Excellent. Alex seconded. Can you call the roll?
Yep. Mr. Brown?
What?
I don't know if Mr. Lennox was raising his hand as you were.
Yes, specifically, Josh, it's number 3 under the third whereas, where it talks about the variance of 5% or less. And I think we would change that to not to exceed 10% or 10% or less.
Yes, sir.
Okay, done.
Can we turn it
Amend on motion that way.
Okay, Krista?
To be clear, I'm calling the roll on the amendment and the motion.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
I support.
Mr. Harkins?
Support.
Mr. Ames,
Yes.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Lennox,
Yes.
Mr. Stanford,
Yes.
Cam,
Yes. And going on to number D, consideration of a resolution for the approval of the issuance. Are we all here? Okay.
We are, but before you go on, can I formally get that invitation from you to make sure that I'm part of this?
Mr. Lennox, the chairman will invite you, Tammy. Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Approval of the issuance by Beaufort County Authority of its multifamily housing revenue bonds. And is someone here from the Housing Authority gonna address that?
Yes. Sir, Ms. Childress is on the line from the Housing Authority.
Angela, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Again, I'm Angela Childers, the Director of Beaufort Housing Authority, and I come before you this evening seeking the approval for Beaufort Housing Authority to issue multifamily housing revenue bonds for the renovation of Hilton Head Gardens. With me via Zoom is Ms. Paige Mazicki with Vitus Development and Mr. Sam Howell with Howell, Linkous, and Nettles serving as bond counsel. Vitus Development is seeking to renovate Hilton Head Gardens, and Beaufort Housing Authority is assisting Vitus in the financing of the renovations by issuing the Housing Authority's multifamily housing revenue bonds to provide a portion of the funds needed for the project, as well as to qualify the project for federal and state low-income housing tax credits. These bonds will allow Vitus to raise equity funds to pay a portion of the money needed for the renovations. Extensive renovations are planned, and Paige will be able to discuss in detail if you would like. And most importantly, Hilton Head Gardens will remain affordable housing. State law requires no other local approvals for the issuance of bonds by the Beaufort Housing Authority for this project. Federal tax law, however, requires that public approval be given following a public hearing by one, the elected governmental body having jurisdiction over the issuer of the bonds, and two, the elected body having jurisdiction over the site and the project. So for the Hilton Head Gardens project, the elected body having jurisdiction over the issuer is Beaufort City Council, and they have already granted approval. But the elected governmental body having jurisdiction over the site is you, Hilton Head Island Town Council, so we are seeking your approval. The Housing Authority gave public notice and conducted a public hearing with respect to the project on September 29th, 2021. No persons gave comment either orally or in writing in opposition to the proposed bond financing. The bonds will be payable by the Housing Authority solely from revenues derived from the operation of the respective project by Vitus and will be secured by mortgages on the respective property. The bonds will not be an obligation of the town, nor will they be a claim against the town's taxing powers or debt limit. For Hilton Head Gardens, the Series A bonds will be issued in the amount of approximately $11,500,000. The Series B note will be issued in the amount of approximately $2,500,000. The Series A bonds will be credit enhanced by a mortgage-backed security issued by the Federal National Mortgage Association, or Fannie Mae. The payments by Fannie Mae will pay debt service on the Series A bonds. Vitus Development will reimburse Fannie Mae for the payments. As a result of this structure, the Series A bonds are rated AAA by Moody's Investor Service. This Series B note will be structured as a private placement commercial lender. Beaufort Housing Authority is committed to maintaining and retaining affordable housing, and we feel this is one way to do that and maintain the integrity of Hilton Head Gardens.
Nice and clean.
Thank you for your consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I am very pleased to see this happening with that project. It needs major renovation. You indicated that the bonds would be providing a portion of the needed funds for those renovations. Does the Housing Authority have the other funds necessary available, either through loans or otherwise?
I'm going to let Paige answer that for you.
Hi, this is Paige Miyazaki. I'm the development manager for the Hilton Head Gardens project over here at Vitus. And we are requesting the bond inducement from the Beaufort Housing Authority. And we will also have a permanent construction loan from Fannie Mae.
And that permanent construction loan would be paid off out of the revenues of the project?
Yes, sir.
Fine, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Tom?
Yeah, what is the total project cost?
Total project costs we have is around 27 million.
Big number.
This is just as Angela said, this is a substantial renovation. We're looking at about $50,000 per unit in construction hard costs.
Go ahead, Angela.
It's important to note that tenants will not be displaced except for a brief stay. I believe Paige has found an extended stay hotel for the ADA units, which must be brought up to code. And I believe Vitus thinks that it will take about 3 weeks. So they've already made those reservations.
That's good.
For an extended stay for only the ADA units. No one else will be displaced.
Thank you. Any other questions for David?
Yeah, thank you. Paige, I guess I'll direct this to you if I might. Are you contemplating any additional units on the site? Any new construction?
We are not. No new construction at the Hilton Head Gardens project.
Okay.
It's currently 112 units, and all 112 are covered by a Section 8 HAP contract. So as Angela mentioned, we will be renewing that HAP contract for an additional 20 years of affordability, and we will retain all 112 units.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds because I'm not exactly sure it's relevant today, but just out of curiosity, are there going to be any additional or new site amenities, and will there be landscaping as a part of the project?
Yes, landscaping will definitely be added to this project because the project is quite vast. There will be no new amenities added, but more just restructuring the current amenities that are on site. There is a small leasing office, there is a small playground, but as Angela mentioned, none of those are up to ADA accessible compliance code. So we will be bringing all common areas, all common amenities up to code standards for ADA compliance.
Well, I'm very supportive of the project. I think it's important for the community to have this renovation take place. So I'm ready to move on. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to get a little better understanding of the, I guess, the entities here. So, Angela, I guess I'll ask you first. You currently have a binding relationship with Hilton Head Housing Partners, or I'm learning now, Vitus?
With Vitus Development, yes, we do.
And Vitus is who?
Vitus is the developer, and I believe they have purchased Hilton Head Gardens.
So Hilton Head Housing Partners is who?
I don't know.
That is the borrower entity. So Vitus Development 4, which is the company that I work for, we are the developer. We're also part owner. So the ownership entity or the borrower entity for the loans is Hilton Head Housing Partners LP.
So who is the managing partner?
Managing partner would be our general partner, which is Hilton Head Management LLC, Housing Management LLC, which is 100% owned by Vitus Development 4.
Okay. And Angela, can you just briefly describe your relationship with Vitus?
So we are the conduit issuer for the bonds for Vitus to be able to finance the renovations at Hilton Head Gardens. That's about the extent of our partnership.
Okay. And can anybody, I guess, give me a little bit more detail on why the tax code asks for a municipality to approve?
Sure. If Mr. Howell is available, I'll ask him to answer that for you because it is legal information.
Sure. This is Sam Howell. I'm a bond lawyer in Charleston and working with Vitus and the Housing Authority on this financing. That's an interesting question. Mr. Brown, bonds are not only issued, say for, directly by Hilton Head Island Town Council to make improvements for the town, such as, municipal buildings and services, but there are conduit bonds that are issued around the country where a private business, in this case, Vitus, is the actual owner of the facility that's financed with the bonds. They're called private activity bonds. And in South Carolina, they're pretty closely watched by the legislature. They can only do strictly what they're allowed to do, such as affordable housing, or some of the major economic development projects in the state get funded by these kinds of bonds as well for major industries. But in other parts of the country, back in the 1980s, there were abuses that came about where bonds were issued by communities in other states to finance things like fast food restaurants and even massage parlors and sun tanning lotion and tanning beds, salons and all. The Congress thought that was abusive. So and a lot of the states under their state law, just some appointed authority issues these bonds. So Congress now requires an authority like the Beaufort Housing Authority to issue these kinds of bonds has to go to an elected body so that the elected officials can weigh in as to whether it's an appropriate way to use these kinds of bonds. Now, in this case, I would recommend to you that using bonds under the federal tax code that are supposed to be issued for affordable housing rental properties fits perfectly well with Hilton Head Gardens. And so I think you would not be going out on a limb to support this under the federal tax code.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howell. And how long has Vitus been in ownership of the complex?
We purchased the property in July 2020. Or sorry,
Okay,
oh my God, July 2021.
Okay, so brand new owners.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I will wrap up now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm going to take this opportunity, however, to say that I am pleased that you are moving in the direction of rehabilitation, massive rehabilitation. I am continuously receiving phone calls from tenants in that complex telling me how unsafe it is. Okay, so I really appreciate you moving forward. I'd also kindly ask. I know that the state code does not necessarily require this, but as you move forward with development, you work very closely with our town staff because that area is definitely a part of our community. And we have very high expectations when it comes to what goes into a community, okay? So I think we have an opportunity here. Unfortunately, that area has been one that has been in the shadows for too long. I appreciate a developer coming in and giving it an uplift. So we welcome you as a part of the community and ask that you be a part of the community as you move the project forward. Thank you.
Any other questions? Tam, you get your hand up? Yes.
I do. I have two questions, I think, and a comment. First of all, I think this is a great move. I think that it was aptly described as something and long overdue at that site. I've had many tours through there and spoken to many of the residents, and I'm hopeful for the future, for their future at this point. Part of the question that Mr. Ames asked had to do with amenities. Correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point, and maybe even currently, I hope, there was a Head Start program that was being run in the back offices. As it was described to me that there was a program there, and if that's so, will those spaces be brought up to code and to expectations for early childhood education?
Well, thank you, Councilman Becker. The Head Start program is actually across the street at Sandalwood, and it has undergone substantial renovation as well, including their playground.
Okay. So there's the space where the children gather for it. Is there an ongoing program there currently?
There is, and it is active. Yes, ma'am.
It is active. All right. Since it's at a different location, I'll stop my questions now, but I'd be interested in knowing about what the facilities are at this point that the children are being taught in. My other question was, with this project, it was mentioned keeping up with Hilton Head standards, which is obviously which is obvious. Will this project need to go through any of the DBR site approvals, development approvals? Do we know?
I would think so.
I'll let Paige address that.
Is there any? Okay.
This is Paige. I'm unfamiliar with the DVR, with what DVR
It's the Design Review Board here on Hilton Head that projects go through that committee to make sure that they, mostly its exterior design is consistent with Hilton Head character, island character.
I will check with our construction manager, but I do believe that it has, because we did have a very extensive review of our plans in order to receive building permits through the town of Hilton Head.
All right. I'll just stay on and ask that question again at a later time to follow up on it, but thank you for your time at this point.
Glenn, you got a question? Glenn, did you have a question?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, having answered all, yes, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, just so that we are clear, that's why I asked the question of Ms. Childers, her relationship with Hilton Head Gardens. I don't want us or the public to be confused here. This is a bond that is going to uplift Hilton Head Gardens.
Right.
Sandalwood Terrace,
right,
that Beaufort County Housing Authority has jurisdiction over, is the other complex that is in still desperate need of uplift.
That is correct. Yes. And we do have a plan for that. We're just not ready to bring that forward at this time.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And we look forward to those plans coming forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll, please.
Yes, sir. Oh, actually, no, I need a motion and a second on that to approve it.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Roll, Krista.
Mr. Harkins,
Move. Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Support.
Mr. Ames,
Yes.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
excuse me, Mr. Lennox,
Yes.
Mr. Stanford,
Yes.
Mayor McKim.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Angela. Item E is consideration of recommendation by the ATAX committee. Have a motion on that?
I make a motion to approve as presented.
Do I have a second? Okay, any discussion by that? Thomas?
John, clarification on Hilton Head Concours d'Elegance. The amount approved by the committee was how much?
Yep.
Jim?
Mr. Lennox, this is Jim Fluker, the chairman of the committee. You're looking probably at our page 3 of our recommendation, which is your page 376 of the.
Yes.
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 That recommendation was 307. That's a misprint on that right side aisle. So it should be 307 on both what they asked
Thank you.
for.
That's what I thought.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions on this?
Thanks, Jim.
Alex?
Yeah. I'm not sure if these are questions. There's just a couple comments I wanted to make along the way. And thank Mr. Fooker and his team for putting together the information and doing such a thorough job with the process. I understand that there are only 2 applicants that did not receive funding. Just a couple of notes here. I see that the airport is receiving $160,000 for I guess additional airline service. Okay, this airport, of course, is one of the front doors to our island. We need to make sure that we are absolutely putting forth our best effort. I do have some grave concerns about how much we are marketing and how big we're trying to be, particularly when it comes to attracting the airlines. So I just offer that as an observation from council and constituents. And the other one, the move of the 50K from, I guess, the Hilton Head Golf to the Hilton Head Chamber, in keeping with the intent of our plan, which includes our Parks and Rec master plan. In the future, we will more than likely see other sports activities potentially become attractions to our island, okay? And I want to make sure that if there are entities or organizations that are promoting those, i.e. pickleball, that there's going to be monies available and that the chamber is not necessarily just gobbling it all up, okay? So those are just my 2 comments as I went through the information. Again, thank you for being so thorough.
Thank you. All right, being no more questions, Christian, call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Mr. Lennox?
Mr. Fluker, congratulations on the outstanding work that you and your committee does. I continue to have nothing but confidence in the process and your recommendations. Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mayor McCann?
Yes.
Motion carried, sir.
Okay, moving on to F. Discussion of the contractual matters pertaining to the town manager. It is my pleasure to put on the table here now. We talked about a 3-year contract for Mr. Orlando, no salary increase at the time, and a $15,000 year-end bonus. Do I have a motion on that? Mr. Stanford made a motion. Second. Second. Any discussion on that?
I just one comment. I'm delighted with the 3-year contract. We're very fortunate to have somebody like our town manager here, Mark Orlando, and I think we're sending a clear message to him and to the community that we hope he's a long-term player and partner with us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Oh.
I'll answer the role as I also echo Councilman Hawkins' comments. Mr. Orlando, job well done in the short period of time that you have been here. Really appreciate your commitment, your effort. You've put on your running shoes. You're gonna need you a few more pairs for the next 3 years because we got a lot of work to get done here, okay? So I support the motion.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes, and I'm smiling here because I enjoyed Mr. Brown's athletic reference there.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Lennox,
Yes.
Mr. Stanford,
I'm proud to support this motion, yes.
Mayor McCann.
And I'm also proud to support this motion. Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Good job.
Mr.
Good job.
Orlando.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Do we have, Ms. Orlando, do we have a necessary to go to an executive session?
Yes, sir, to discuss negotiations related to the proposed sale or purchase of property in the Bayberry Lane area per FOIA Act 30-4-70A2.
Have a motion to go into executive session?
So move.
Second. All in favor, raise your right hand. I will take a couple minute break and go into executive session.
more than one moment.
I'm going to kind of our executive producer.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Not yet. Once you go live.
I'm going to send you something.
Record first and live.
Sir, staff is ready when you are.
Okay, we're back from executive session with nothing to report. There will be an item, a follow-up on an item on the January 4th agenda, which Tricia will be putting on. Before you end the meeting, I want to wish you all a good holiday. It's been a good year. It's good when we don't agree on everything, but we get along at the end. So thank you very, very much. Good holiday to everybody. Merry Christmas.
Same to you, everyone.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.